Welcome to Westbury Station on a cold and foggy winter's morning. Really busy here, actually. The car park was really full, and I had to go right to the edge of the overflow to get a space. So that was quite interesting. It's maybe not quite the railway centre it once was, Westbury, but it's still pretty busy. Still a fair amount of freight going through in the area here, and some important regional services. One of which is from Westbury down to Taunton. Now, that's where I'm heading. I'm off to see a new open access operator called Co-op, who are proposing to run a service on this line, then also up to Swindon, and then from Taunton up to Wester-super-Mare. I'm going to talk to them about their plans. I'm really hoping Station Cafe's open, though, because it's jolly cold. I need a coffee. But we'll head on to the station, hopefully jump on the train down to Taunton, and go and see what Co-op have got planned.
I was delighted to see the coffee shop was open, and shortly afterwards, GWR's Devon Express turned up, a 9-car IEP set bound for Paynton, and stopping as far as I was concerned at Castle Carey, the junction for Yeovil, and then Taunton. There were a smattering of people on the platform, though the train itself was lightly loaded. Once at Taunton, I made my way across town to Co-op Cooperative Limited's modest, perfectly functional office, where I met with Alex Lawrie, chair of Co-op, and David Northey, vice chair. David is a career railwayman, and latterly was a senior development manager in Network Rail from 2012 until 2022. Alex, David and I spent some time together talking about the journey of Co-op from their beginnings to this point. And then it was time to speak formally with Alex about what is planned. Welcome to Green Signals, Alex. Delighted you're able to join us for this conversation. Co-op, Cooperative Limited. So that's, in railway terms, that's a very new concept. Just explain a little bit about what a cooperative is and why you think it could be applicable to a railway service.
Sure, yeah. So a cooperative is simply a democratic business. It's a business that is run by and for the people who rely on its services. And in the UK, we've been very familiar for many years with cooperatives delivering retail of groceries, for example. There are a lot of agricultural cooperatives. And a lot of small co-ops, a lot of workers' co-ops, for example, in the service sector. But I guess it's unusual for us to see a co-op in a very capital-intensive sector of the economy. It's been very common elsewhere in the world. Italy, France, Spain have very large manufacturing cooperatives, for example. But in the UK, it's only relatively recently that the range of tools for raising capital for co-ops has been expanded. And I guess that's what's triggered the move into a number of sectors like energy and telecoms, and now rail.
So the question of capital is really interesting, isn't it? So railways are expensive to build, to operate. Some would say, too expensive, but that's probably a separate conversation. But they do require quite deep pockets to be able to run them. So for this, where do you think, where's the capital going to come from? Who's likely to want to invest in this?
So cooperatives thrive from having a very broad base of support, a large number of small investors rather than a small number of large investors. And we've already found that we've built up quite a community of people, both who expect to make use of the services of the co-op and also in a supportive role, people elsewhere who just want to give their backing to the idea. And what we're offering is a balanced investment. It's a mix of social impact, social benefits, but also a financial return so that people can use it as a way to preserve and enhance their capital. And that means we have quite a mix of people who've made a very basic £25 membership investment, but also people who put in tens of thousands of pounds as a long-term investment, maybe getting the benefit of venture capital tax reliefs. Now, cooperatives don't offer the windfall profits, the get-rich-quick opportunities that, say, transferable share capital provides. But the offer is one of steady, predictable returns over a period of time and a conscientiousness and a base of support that gives the business resilience and gives you confidence that it won't disappear overnight.
So one of the things I was going to ask was almost like, why here? We're sat in Taunton at the moment. This is one of the hubs, I suppose, on your proposed network. Is this part of the country particularly attracted to these kind of investments? Or why here?
Well, I have some theories, but it's not a question I can answer very exactly. I suppose there's something about the geography of Somerset and Wiltshire that we've had these train lines running through the peninsula where high-speed intercity trains have tended to speed through the counties rather than facilitate interconnections within them and in the immediate region. So I think there's a gap that we've been able to address there. But I think there's also something about the nonconformist tradition in the West Country, the willingness to entertain new ideas and to be not overly respectful of orthodoxy, and certainly things like community energy caught on very quickly round here, and so there's a large number of very successful and well-financed community energy schemes here, and we're drawing on some of that experience and expertise. But the short answer is I don't entirely know. It could have happened almost anywhere, I suspect.
So we're talking at a time when you've reached something of a milestone. So the Office of Rail and Road have given you access rights to run this service, but they're slightly unusual, aren't they? Because they are subject to, and the subject tos involve quite a lot of I suppose funding, and also they're quite tight on time.
We have secured their approval, and that is a big breakthrough moment for us. But we have also been given something of a challenge there. The first thing that we've absolutely got to do is to demonstrate our financial resilience. And so in the next few weeks, we're going to be launching a share offer with a fixed target for investment, a sum of money that we absolutely have to have secured for our purposes, really by the spring, although the ORR have given us a full year for that. And then the next thing that we need to do is to make sure that at the very latest, by December 2026, we are actually making use of the capacity on the railway that we've been offered and showing that we can run trains safely and in good order on the network. Now, that's particularly a challenge because one of the conditions is that we must maintain the safety levels at all the level crossings on our route, and that is going to require some minor civil engineering works. And as anyone who's been involved in planning civil engineering works on the railway knows, these things can't be done all that quickly. So that, I think, is probably the critical path to us, is to make sure that the tracks are actually ready for our services in good time.
And in terms of the capital, the money, how much are we talking about that you need to have effectively had committed from this public offering by the spring?
So we're still finalising the share offer document, but I think we're looking for something of the order of £2.5 million to be confident that we've got the resources we need to start operating trains. Now, clearly, once we're operating, like any new service on the railways, we expect to spend 2-3 years losing money, and we're going to need to finance those losses as well. But once we've demonstrated our ability to run trains, I think it's reasonable to expect that loan finance will be more readily available to us, and we'll be able to shift the burden of capitalisation from equity to debt. And so, the total capital requirement for launching this service is going to be of the order of £5 million.
I mean, that doesn't sound a huge amount in the context of a railway, but in the context of a cooperative venture, it does sound quite a lot. I mean, levels of confidence around being able to do that?
It's not going to be the largest capitalisation of a cooperative. Some of the big community energy schemes erecting huge wind turbines have already exceeded that. But and I think it is modest by the standards of the railways, and ours is a modest plan. I think we've designed this as what you might call a minimum viable product,
right?
A way in which we can demonstrate the ability of our business to run modest but useful train services in Somerset and Wiltshire. It's absolutely not the limits of our ambition. Once we've bedded in this route, we're very keen to introduce further routes, and we'll expect to be serving larger settlements, but with the same basic philosophy.
Yeah.
We're here to fill gaps on the railway, not to duplicate existing services, but to bring real utility to passengers by connecting districts and regions and settlements that have been poorly connected to date.
We'll come back to your future plans in a minute, but the bit you said there about filling gaps and not duplicating. One of the issues that is raised in all open access operations is the question of abstraction. And in the ORR's determination letter, or the award letter effectively, they refer to this and say that your proposed services will abstract revenue from GWR. It doesn't breach the not primarily abstracted test, but it's still, £700,000 of the 1.1 million that is in the model is from GWR. So, I mean, that does feel like an indirect subsidy. What's your kind of response to that, really?
So the initial modelling that you have to do for demand forecasting uses the Moira method, which is essentially looking at the existing use of the railways and how that'll increase with the introduction of new services. What it doesn't capture so well is the routes that are presently impractical or unfeasible to do by rail. There are, for example, very few people regularly travelling between Taunton and Yeovil by rail because the connections really don't support it. You'd waste an enormous amount of time compared to taking the car. But with our services added, the connections at Castle Kerry get much better, and all of a sudden, regular journeys between Taunton and Yeovil become practical. And that introduces a lot of new revenue onto the railways. It's something that has to be added into our demand forecast alongside Moira with a gravity model. And that is almost entirely generative. And so we feel, firstly, that our demand is actually going to be more like 50-50 generative abstractive. And of course, GWR will benefit from our presence on the railway. We then have to contribute to their station management fees, for example. We contribute a share of that, which is certainly of the order of hundreds of thousands of pounds. And many of the journeys that we do, that we offer, people will be starting on a go-up train, but finishing the journey on a GWR train. And so these people new to the network are bringing extra revenue to GWR. It's all difficult to see exactly how it's going to play out over time, but our expectation is that GWR could very easily find they are better off with go-up on the network alongside them than they were without.
Let's talk about sort of practical delivery issues as well for a minute. So you've got your issue with Network Rail, where they will be now directed to enter into a track access agreement, but you've still got to sort out your level crossings, and that can take time. But you presumably there's a plan for that. You've also got to lease some rolling stock. Where's the rolling stock coming from I suppose from a leasing point of view, and operationally, how's the model going to work for you?
So rolling stock is always a challenge for a new open access operation. I think it's probably been the biggest single obstacle that we've had to clear over the last few years. And we're looking at the Class 153 fleet that's presently being operated by Transport for Wales. And Transport Wales came up with a very clever scheme working with Porterbrook to upgrade the 153 units, which were in danger of being made redundant due to their poor level of accessibility for people with disabilities. And they implemented a package of works to improve all of the Porterbrook's 153 fleet, which has been very successful. However, Transport Wales have now got new trains coming in that are being progressively introduced, and as they come in, they're going to be returning a lot of the 153 fleet to Porterbrook. And our expectation is that that's going to happen at just the right time for us to take them up and begin route familiarisation in early 2026.
So no deal done yet in writing, but a high level of confidence that those are the sets you'll be able to,
I think,
to make use of.
Porterbrook are very much in a similar position to the Office of Rail and Road, that they need to see that we have got the financial resilience there before they can enter into detailed negotiations with us, and that is not unreasonable.
So you're a startup business, and that means in terms of the practical experience of running and operating a train fleet, that's something that's new, but it's not a trivial matter. So where will the trains be maintained then, and presumably heavy maintenance as well? That's presumably something you'll have to contract with someone to deliver.
So for our timetable to really work effectively, we need to have trains starting operation at both ends of the route, one to the west, one to the east. And so we're looking to have sidings of our own depot facility that we can use for light maintenance, for cleaning at either the west or the east end of the route. Now, when we put in our application in 2022, Thingley Junction near Chippenham was the prime option, and that's very much still on our shortlist. But of course, that was 2 years ago. Things have moved on, so we're continuing to explore the best option for doing that. Heavy maintenance, I think we'll almost certainly be taking a soggy lease with Porterbrook so that they can take charge of the heavy maintenance. And I guess the most likely venue for that would be the Canton depot at Cardiff.
Okay, so but these are, as you say, details still to be sorted out, and that finance remains that you need to be able to demonstrate that you've got that sort of viable plan. No, get that completely. On the question of viability, then, I mean, we know from train operations over the last few years, a big event like a pandemic can change the financial viability of businesses literally overnight. Now, obviously, we all hope that we won't face one of those again in the near future, but you could find yourself in a situation where your losses are higher than you predicted, and capital's not as easy to come by as you'd hope. What happens in that situation? Because you don't have a massive balance sheet to fall back on. So what's the plan if that comes about?
So I think we've become increasingly aware in recent years that the rail sector is vulnerable to external events, some triggered by climate change, some triggered by international forces or economic forces. And we need to be resilient in the face of these disruptions. Now, cooperative businesses have a really good track record for resilience. The failure rate is generally less than for conventional businesses. And I think that's because they can draw on a level of support and backing and tolerance from their members because there's a relationship of trust that's been established there and a broad base of communication and membership support. Now, in addition to that, I think we're also able to say to investment partners, look, this is an industry with very long time horizons, that whatever difficulties we're facing in the present, this is an opportunity to continue operating the route many years into the future. There's a strong presumption that at the end of each period of track access contract, it will be renewed. So you can invest in us confident in the knowledge that short-term perturbations are ironed out over the long term. And I think the third part of the answer to the question is about innovation, that we're not resting on our laurels with this first route. We're seeking to develop more routes that are in many ways larger in scale, more ambitious, and quite possibly with greater profit margins on them as well. So we're progressing from the small scale to the larger scale and building our resilience as a business as we do so.
So that will have people's ears pricking up. So where may those be? I mean, are we talking about potentially going to Bristol? Are we talking about maybe the sort of the Holy Grail being getting closer to London? What are the plans?
We're at the very early stages of developing our next route, but we're going through a process of consultation with our members at the moment just to get a sense of what the criteria are that they'd want us to apply to this. And there's certainly a lot of interest in developing routes that will intersect with and contribute to passengers on this first route. So we're aiming to create a little bit of a network. And I think there is a strong support for our approach of not simply looking at honeypot destinations like London, but instead trying to make connections that cut across existing routes and link them up effectively. But yeah, certainly I think Bristol is a huge, vibrant city, a lot going on there, and I think justifies further investment in rail services. And yeah, I think we see a number of opportunities to spread out from the West Country and extend connections to neighbouring regions as well. So yes, it's early days yet, but there's a number of really interesting ideas that are in the R&D.
It's a wonderfully diplomatic answer, but I think probably a very wise one as well. So let's just talk about people. Okay, so you've on your team of, I suppose, of if I say volunteers, don't mean that in a disrespectful way. But at the moment, you've drawn upon quite a deep well of expertise and experience, which is tremendous. But the business of running a train company is a different thing. So, what's the plan to resource up to be able to be operationally match fit?
Yeah, we've got this far on the strength of having fantastic support from volunteers and also some really effective partnerships with subcontractors and consultants who've been able to advise us and solve particular problems for us. And I think we're particularly grateful to Nigel Harris of the Railway Consultancy, who's done a huge amount of work for us over the years. But we are going to need to bring in the missing element, which is permanent skilled staff. And that process of recruitment is going to begin very soon with our operations director, for example, and a safety director. They'll sit at board level as ex officio board members. And we're also recruiting trainee train drivers. We're going to be working with Trained Up on a course for bringing new drivers into the industry, because there's a well-known shortage for skilled drivers. And so, yeah, over the course of the next year and a half, we're going to be employing about 40 people. So we really are going from 0 to 40 very quickly.
Very quickly. That's good to hear about the train drivers, because I know there is a frustration amongst some train companies that they pay for the training, then other people poach them. You're talking about bringing in new talent and training them up and increasing the number of drivers in the whole industry. That's
absolutely,
that'll
and
be
I
a
think
positive thing.
we have to be realistic and say that as we train new train drivers, we're going to experience the reverse process. They're going to stay with Co-op for a while, but they will obviously see opportunities to develop their career elsewhere in the industry, and we will be very happy to see them develop in that way. We think it's a great thing that we can contribute to the industry, is to bring new people in and give them their first big break.
Okay, so in terms of the next 3-6 months, then it is now the critical issue, this finance. I mean, in terms of, I'm sure things don't keep you awake at night, but if anything did, would it be that? Is that what you think? If we can get through that hurdle, we're off and running.
It's definitely our first big challenge, yes. Our goal is to have the finance that we need to get trains operating signed and sealed by spring next year. And we think that's an entirely achievable goal. But at the background, we can't simply wait for that to happen. We have to be laying the groundwork for that, work on the level crossings, which is obviously going to be taking a considerable amount of time to implement. We need to get the driver training started in a timely fashion. And yeah, there's plenty for us to be getting on with while we're promoting that share offer to the public.
Okay. I suppose very, very final question, Alex. Your background is in cooperative development, not in the railway industry. And I imagine it's been quite a learning curve. If you knew back when you started this what you know now, would you still have done this? Do you still feel as if this was a good thing to do? I suppose, are you more enthused now than you were, or just a bit more hardened?
I'm a Johnny come lately to the industry. There is no question about it.
Yeah.
And I have learned a tremendous amount. It's been absolutely necessary for me to try and absorb as much knowledge about the railways as I can from the very experienced people around me. And I think I've learned a great deal. I don't think I was ever someone who had a real understanding of a safety culture in a business before, and I'm really starting to get that now, and it's a fascinating change of perspective. But one of the things that has surprised me, I guess, is that coming into the rail industry, I've found that although we may be new as a cooperative, cooperation is absolutely not alien to the industry at all. In fact, I found it a really collegiate place in which people work together for the good of the network. And so, yeah, perhaps surprisingly, I find that being set up as a co-op, it's actually a very natural alignment, a very good fit.
That's a lovely thought to end on. Well, look, it is innovative. It is different. You have got some tough targets, and the timescales are tight. But we'll be watching it with interest. And good luck with all the next phases of your business plan. Who knows? maybe before too long I'll be able to jump on a go-up train at Chippenham.
Absolutely.
And we'll see how that goes. But for now, Alex, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
After we'd finished, I wandered back to Taunton station to catch my train home. I muttered slightly to myself when I realised I had just missed the train to Westbury and had over an hour to wait until the next one. Fortunately, there's a rather splendid cafe on the platform at Taunton, so I spent time watching the trains come and go. I'd rather have been on my way home though, so perhaps, after all, there is going to be a market for the additional services that Co-op are planning.